In this video, we will be going over the cyber kill chain. When trying to understand how to defend a network, we need to understand how attackers work. And with that, we need to have some sort of framework, some sort of understanding of how cyber attacks move forward. And one great framework is the cyber kill chain, or the Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain. In this video, we'll be going through the cyber kill chain room on TryHackMe, which is part of the SOC Level 1 training path. Let's get started. Cyber kill chain. The cyber kill chain framework is designed for identification of and prevention of the network intrusions. You will learn what the adversaries need to do in order to achieve their goals. Introduction. So here we have an image of what the cyber kill chain looks like and what it kind of depicts in terms of what we're going to cover in this room. The term kill chain is a military concept related to the structure of an attack. It consists of target identification, decision and order to attack the target, and finally the target destruction. Thanks to Lockheed Martin, a global security and aerospace company that established the cyber kill chain framework for the cybersecurity industry in 2011 based on the military concept. The framework defines the steps used by adversaries or malicious actors in cyberspace. To succeed, an adversary needs to go through all phases of the kill chain. We will go through the attack phases and help you better understand the adversaries and their techniques used in the attack to defend yourself. So why is it important to understand how cyber kill chain works? The cyber kill chain will help you understand and protect against ransomware attacks, security breaches, as well as advanced persistent threats. You can use the cyber kill chain to assess your network and system security by identifying missing security controls and closing certain security gaps based on your company's infrastructure. By understanding the kill chain as a SOC analyst, security researcher, threat hunter, or incident responder, you will be able to recognize the intrusion attempts and understand the intruder's goals and objectives. We will be exploring the following attack phases in this room: Reconnaissance, Weaponization, Delivery, Exploitation, Installation, Command and Control, Actions on Objectives, Learning Objectives. In this room, you will learn about each phase of the cyber kill chain framework, the advantages and disadvantages of the traditional cyber kill chain. Outcome. As a result, you will be ready to recognize different phases or stages of the attack carried out by an adversary and be able to break the kill chain. So as we see here in the picture, we have recon, weaponization, delivery, exploitation, installation, command and control, actions on objectives, and then it goes further. So we'll go to our first step, reconnaissance. To learn what reconnaissance is from the attacker's perspective, first let's define the term reconnaissance. Reconnaissance is discovering and collecting information on the system and the victim. The reconnaissance phase is the planning phase for the adversary. OSINT, or open source intelligence, also falls under reconnaissance. OSINT is the first step an attacker needs to complete to carry out the further phases of an attack. The attacker needs to study the victim by collecting every available piece of information on the company and its employees, such as the company's size, email addresses, phone numbers from publicly available resources to determine the best target for the attack. You can also find out more about OSINT from this Varonis article, What is OSINT? Let's look at it from the attacker's perspective, who initially doesn't know what the company he wants to attack. Here is the scenario. A malicious attacker who names himself Megatron decides to conduct a very sophisticated attack that he has been planning out for years. He has been studying and researching different tools and techniques that could help him to get the last phase of the cyber kill chain. But first he needs to start from the reconnaissance phase. In order to operate in this phase, the attacker would need to conduct OSINT. Let's have a look at email harvesting. Email harvesting is the process of obtaining email addresses from public, paid, and free services. An attacker can use email address harvesting for a phishing attack, a type of social engineering attack used to steal sensitive data, including login credentials and credit card numbers. The attacker will have a big arsenal of tools available for reconnaissance purposes, and here are some of them. We have the harvester, Other than gathering emails, this tool is also capable of gathering names, subdomains, IPs, and URLs using multiple public data sources. Hunter.io. This is an email hunting tool that will let you obtain contact information associated with the domain. And the OSINT framework. OSINT framework provides the collection of OSINT tools based on various categories. An attacker would also use social media websites such as LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to collect information on a specific victim he would want to attack or the company. The information found on social media can be beneficial for an attacker to conduct a phishing attack. What is the name of the intel gathering tool that is a web-based interface to the common tools and resources for open source intelligence? I'm guessing that would be this OSINT framework. Let's have a look at it. Ooh, this is fancy. So you got new usernames. Let's look. Specific sites. GitHub users. So it links up to the API. That's very interesting. Huh. Cool. Wow. So we got OSINT framework. What is the definition of the email gathering process during the stage of reconnaissance? What is the definition for the email gathering process during the stage of reconnaissance? The email harvesting. That's the one. Cool. Move on to weaponization. After a successful reconnaissance stage, Megatron would work on crafting a weapon of destruction. He would prefer not to interact with the victim directly, and instead he will create a weaponizer that, according to Lockheed Martin, combines malware and exploit into a deliverable payload. Most attackers usually use automated tools to generate the malware and refer to the dark web to purchase the malware. More sophisticated actors or nation-sponsored APTs would write their custom malware to make the malware sample unique and evade detection on the target. Let's first define some terminology before we analyze the weaponization phase. Malware is a program or software that is designed to damage, disrupt, or gain unauthorized access to a computer. An exploit is a program or a code that takes advantage of the vulnerability or flaw in the application or system. A payload is a malicious code that the attacker runs on the system. Continuing with that adversary, Megatron chooses to buy an already written payload from someone else in the dark web, so that he can spend more time on the other phases. In the weaponization phase, the attacker would create an infected Microsoft Office document containing a malicious macro or VBA, Visual Basic for Application script. If you want to learn about macro and VBA, please refer to the article Intro to Macros and VBA for Script Kiddies. An attacker can create a malicious payload or a very sophisticated worm implanted on the USB drives and distribute them in public, an example of a virus. An attacker would choose command and control techniques for executing commands on the victim's machines or delivering more payloads. You can read more about the C2 techniques on MITRE ATT&CK. An attacker would select a backdoor implant, the way to access the computer system, which includes bypassing the security mechanisms. This term is referred to as a group of commands that perform a specific task. You can think of them as subroutines or functions that contain the code that most users use to automate routine tasks, but malicious actors tend to use them for malicious purposes and include them in Microsoft Office documents. Can you provide the term for it? It's either a macro or a script. So we'll try a macro. There we go, macro. Let's move on to delivery. The delivery phase is when Megatron decides to choose the method for transmitting the payload or the malware. He has plenty of options to choose from. A phishing email. After conducting the reconnaissance and determining the targets for the attack, the malicious actor would craft a malicious email that would target either a specific person, speech phishing attack, or multiple people in the company. The email would contain a payload or malware. For example, Megatron would learn that Nancy from the sales department at company A would constantly like the post on LinkedIn from Scott, a service delivery manager at company B. He would give it a second guess that they both communicate with each other over work emails. Megatron would craft an email using Scott's first name and last name, making the domain look similar to the company Scott is working at. An attacker would then send a fake invoice email to Nancy which contains the payload. Distributing the second way to distribute a payload would be by distributing infected USB drives in public places like coffee shops, parking lots, or on the street. An attacker might decide to conduct a sophisticated USB drop attack by printing the company's logo on the USB drives and mailing them to the company while pretending to be a customer sending the USB devices as a gift. You can read about one of the similar attacks at CSO Online. Cybercriminal group mails malicious USB dongles to targeted companies. Watering hole attack. A watering hole attack is a targeted attack designed to aim at a specific group of people by compromising the website they are usually visiting and then redirecting them to the malicious website of an attacker's choice. The attacker would look for a known vulnerability for the website and try to exploit it. The attacker would encourage the victims to visit the website by sending harmless emails pointing out the malicious URL to make the attack work more efficiently. After visiting the website, the victim would unintentionally download malware or a malicious application to their computer. This type of attack is called a drive-by download. An example can be a malicious pop-up asking to download a fake browser extension. What is the name of the attack when it is performed against a specific group of people and the attacker seeks to infect the website that is mentioned, but that the mentioned group of people is constantly visiting? That's a watering hole attack. Time for a coffee. Exploitation. To gain access to the system, an attacker needs to exploit the vulnerability. In this phase, Megatron got a little bit creative. He created two phishing emails, one that contains a phishing link to a fake Office 365 login page, and another containing a macro attachment that would execute ransomware when the victim opens it. Megatron successfully delivered his exploits and got two victims to click on the malicious link and open the malicious file. After gaining access to the system, the malicious actor could exploit software system or server-space vulnerabilities to escape the privileges or move laterally through the network. According to CrowdStrike, lateral movement refers to the technique that a malicious actor uses after gaining initial access to the victim's machine to move deeper into a network to obtain sensitive data. If you want to learn more about server-based or web-based vulnerabilities, please refer to the TryHackMe Room OWASP Top 10. The attacker might also apply a zero-day exploit in this stage. According to FireEye, the zero-day exploit or zero-day vulnerability is an unknown exploit in the wild that exposes a vulnerability in software or hardware and can create complicated problems well before anyone realizes something is wrong. A zero-day exploit leaves no opportunity for detection at the beginning. These are examples of how an attacker carries out exploitation. The victim triggers the exploit by opening the email attachment or clicking on a malicious link, using a zero-day exploit, exploiting software, hardware, or even human vulnerabilities. An attacker triggers the exploit for server-based vulnerabilities. Can you provide the name for a cyber attack targeting a software vulnerability that is unknown to the antivirus or software vendors? That is a zero-day. Installation. As you have learned from the weaponization phase, the backdoor lets an attacker bypass security measures and hide the access. A backdoor is also known as an access point. Once the attacker gets the access to the system, he would want to re-access the system if he loses the connection to it, or if he got detected and got the initial access removed, or if the system is later patched. He will no longer have access to it. That is when the attacker needs to install a persistent backdoor. A persistent backdoor will let the attacker access the system he compromised in the past. You can check out the Windows Persistence Room on TryHackMe to learn how an attacker can achieve persistence on Windows. The persistence can be achieved through installing a web shell on the server. A web shell is a malicious script written in web development programming language such as ASP, PHP, or JSP, used by an attacker to maintain access to the compromised system. Because of the web shell's simplicity and file formatting can be difficult to detect and might be classified as benign. You may check out this great article released by Microsoft on various web shell attacks. The next way persistence can be achieved is through installing a backdoor on the victim's machine. For example, the attacker can use Meterpreter to install a backdoor on the victim's machine. Meterpreter is a Metasploit framework payload that gives an interactive shell from which an attacker can interact with the victim's machine remotely and execute the malicious code, creating or modifying Windows services. This technique is known as T1543.003 on MITRE ATT&CK. MITRE ATT&CK is a knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques based on real-world scenarios. An attacker can create or modify the Windows services to execute the malicious scripts or payloads regularly as part of the persistence. An attacker can use the tools like SCEXE, which lets you create, start, stop, query, or delete any Windows service, and reg to modify service configurations. The attacker can also masquerade the malicious payload by using a service name that is known to be related to the operating system or legitimate software. They can also add the entry to the run keys for the malicious payload in the registry or the startup folder. By doing that, the payload will execute each time the user logs in on the computer. According to MITRE ATT&CK, there is a startup folder location for individual user accounts and a system-wide startup folder that will be checked no matter what user account logs in. You can read more about registry run keys, startup folder persistence on the MITRE ATT&CK techniques. In this phase, the attacker can also use the time stomping technique to avoid detection by the forensic investigator, and also to make the malware appear as a part of a legitimate program. The time stomping technique lets an attacker modify the file's timestamps, including the modify, access, create, and change times. Can you provide the technique used to modify time attributes to hide new or changes to existing files? Time stomping. Can you name the malicious script planted by an attacker on the web server to maintain access to the compromised system and enable the web server to be accessed remotely? That's a web shell. Command and control. After getting persistence and executing the malware on the victim's machine, Megatron opens up the C2, command and control channel, through the malware to remotely control and manipulate the victim. This term is also known as a CNC or C2 beaconing, as a type of malicious communication between a CNC server and malware on the infected host. The infected host will consistently communicate with the C2 server. That is also where the beaconing term came from. The compromised endpoint would communicate with an external server set up by an attacker to establish a command and control channel. After establishing the connection, the attacker has full control of the victim's machine. Until recently, IRC, Internet Relay Chat, was the traditional C2 channel used by attackers. This is no longer the case, as modern security solutions can easily detect malicious IRC traffic. The most common C2 channels used by adversaries nowadays are the protocols HTTP on port 80 and HTTPS on port 443. This type of beaconing blends the malicious traffic with the legitimate traffic and can help the attacker evade firewalls. DNS, Domain Name Server. The infected machine makes constant DNS requests to the DNS server that belongs to an attacker. This type of C2 communication is known as DNS tunneling. Important to note that an adversary or another compromised host can be the owner of the C2 infrastructure. What is the C2 communication where the victim makes regular DNS requests to a DNS server and domain which belong to an attacker? That's DNS tunneling. We're almost there. Actions on objectives. This is the final phase. After going through 6 phases of the attack, Megatron can finally achieve his goals, which means taking action on the original objectives. With hands-on keyboard access, the attacker can achieve the following: collect credentials from users, perform privilege escalation, gaining elevated access to like domain administrator access from a workstation by exploiting the misconfiguration. Internal reconnaissance, for example, an attacker gets to interact with internal software to find its vulnerabilities. Lateral movement through the company's environment, collect and exfiltrate sensitive data, delete the backups and shadow copies. Shadow copy is a Microsoft technology that can create backup copies, snapshots of computer files or volumes, and overwrite or corrupt data. Can you provide a technology included in Microsoft Windows that can create backup copies or snapshots of files or volumes on the computer even when they are in use? Shadow copy. Copies you in the shadows. Practice analysis. We really hope you enjoyed this room. In order to strengthen your knowledge, let's do a practice analysis. Here is the real-world scenario for you to tackle. The infamous Target cyber attack, which led to one of the largest data breaches in history, took place in November 27, 2013. On December 19, 2013, Target released a statement confirming the breach, stating that approximately 40 million credit and debit card accounts were impacted between the 27th and the 15th of December 2013. Target had to pay the fine of $18 million under the terms of the multi-state settlement agreement. This is considered to be the largest data breach settlement in history. How did the data breach happen? Deploy the static site attached to this task and apply your skills to build the cyber kill chain of this scenario. Here are some tips to help you complete this practical. Add each item on the list in the correct kill chain entry form on the static site lab. Exploit public-facing application, data from local system, PowerShell, dynamic linker, hijacking, spear phishing attachment, fallback channels. Using the check answers button to verify whether the answer is correct, where wrong answers will be underlined in red. Alright, let's do this. Hopefully we'll be better than the pyramid. Let's do this. So we've got reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, installation, command and control, exploitation. The delivery, exploitation, so this would be public facing data. Let's deliver data from local system. What is the command and control? So that will be so the little bug is weaponization. So we want to do a spear phishing attachment. Is that there? Is that there? Try that. At least one of your answers is correct. So I'm guessing we're swapping this. Threat intel is awesome. Cool. So the way that this cyber kill chain works is that they weaponize PowerShell, They did a spear phishing attack. Then they exploited a public-facing, application. They did a dynamic linker hijacking. Then they had fallback channels, and then they exfiltrated data from a local system. That's how they did it. Final thoughts. Cyber kill chain can be a great tool to improve network defense. Is it perfect, and can it be the only tool to rely on? No. The traditional cyber kill chain, or Lockheed Martin cyber kill chain, was last modified in 2011, which, if you remember, is the date of its establishment. The absence of updates and modifications creates security gaps. The traditional cyber kill chain was designed to secure the network perimeter and protect against malware threats, but the cybersecurity threats have developed drastically nowadays, and adversaries are combining multiple tactics, techniques, and procedures to achieve their goal. Adversaries are capable of defeating threat intelligence by modifying the file hashes and IP addresses. Security solutions companies are developing technologies like AI and different algorithms to detect even slight and suspicious changes. Since the main focus of the framework is on malware delivery and network security, the traditional cyber kill chain will not be able to identify insider threats. According to CISA, the insider threat is the potential for an insider to use their unauthorized access or understanding of an organization to harm that organization. We recommend not only relying on the traditional cyber kill chain model, but also referring to MITRE ATT&CK as well as unified kill chain to apply a more comprehensive approach to your defensive methodologies. And with that, we finished the room. As usual, if you found this video helpful and like this kind of content, please like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and we will see you in the next one.